All right, so chapter 17, you know what you need to have. You need to have your book. You need to have your workbook. And today we are going to talk about organizing chaos. And I don't know how else to describe it. And as the director, this may or may not be all about you, or at least part of it. So part of it is going to definitely be the owner or the parent organization that's really going to have a big part of this. So what do we mean by organizing chaos? So we need to know, what is the organizational structure? So is the organizational structure privately owned or publicly owned? So in other words, are you part of a small business? Are you a nonprofit? Are you part of a church? Are you part of a corporation? Is this a small corporation? Just because something is an S Corp or even an LLC doesn't necessarily mean that they're part of a massive corporation. So, or are you part of a franchise? So all of these are different ways to organize a business. That also means that all of the different ways to organize the jobs may or may not have already been decided. So if you're part of a church or a faith-based institution or a school district, there may already be an awful lot of decisions that are already made for you. Human resources has probably already decided job descriptions. They may have already decided who you're going to report to. They may have already decided for you some of the organizational structure, how some of the chaos is going to be organized, how administrative details are going to be handled. If you're a director who is reporting to a business owner, the business owner may have already decided what kind of business structure they're going to have, whether they're going to be a C corporation, an S corporation, an LLC, which is a limited liability corporation, or a sole proprietorship. Or maybe they're going to kind of operate under the auspice of a nonprofit, but maybe they're going to be a tiny nonprofit. So they're going to have maybe a small board of directors. Any of those are the beginning levels of how to organize chaos. So you've already read chapter 17. So you've got some basic ideas of what we mean by the business structure. Now, in your workbook, one of the very things we want you to do in this chapter is to start to think about basic job descriptions. And in basic job descriptions, part of the reason for the job descriptions is so that you as the director know whose job it is. What is your job? So we've worked with a lot of directors who come into the position without a really clear job description. They think they have a job description, they're hired with a job description, and really what they were hired with was maybe a job posting or a job ad, a want ad. And the job description really kind of morphed into a lot of other duties as assigned. So at least once a year, go back and reflect. What do you do? What does the people above you, what do they do? What do the people who report to you do? What do the people who report to them do? And make sure that all of those job descriptions are clear. It is really important to make sure that everybody is understanding their role, their responsibilities, who they report to, because that is a surefire way to keep you from being overwhelmed. You want to know what the expectations are. You want to know who's supposed to get it done. And this just makes it clear for everybody. Plus, if there's different levels, this also helps with kind of backup, so secondary people. So if you have an assistant director, if there are things that are on your job description that maybe also appear on hers or theirs, make sure if it's on theirs, it says things like when the director is out, or that they are the backup, or those kinds of vocabulary, so that they understand that it's not in conflict or at the same time as you, that it is when you are unable to get it done, or if you've asked them to do it. So let's talk a little bit about that. Sometimes you're overwhelmed. Sometimes you're just busy. Sometimes the week just gave you a lot to do. And that's okay. And so it's okay to give responsibilities to somebody. We've talked about it back in, I think it was like chapter 6 in delegating. And it's okay to delegate things. But if you've given something to somebody and you want it to be permanent, that now needs to be part of their job description. And you need to make it clear to them that this is now a permanent part of their roles and responsibilities. So under job descriptions, it needs to include roles and responsibilities. It also needs to include what kind of education do they have to have? What are the minimum job requirements? And then think about why. Why did you feel like those are the minimum? A lot of times we see must have a master's degree or bachelor's degree required. Well, but is it? If it's not in the state of Texas and you can't pay what they could get with a bachelor's degree in education in a school district or other places in the community, you have to be really careful about what you put as entry-level requirements. So when you're doing your job descriptions, please keep that in mind. Think about what the state requires. Do they need to be able to see? Do they need to be able to hear? Do they need to be able to lift? All of that needs to be really clear in your job description. Again, I know that these are examples that you can find online. You know what? If that's what you need to do, that is fine. But make sure that you tweak them so that they work for your organization. If you are part of an organization, check with your human resources staff. That is an advantage of working with franchises, partner organizations. It's also an advantage of networking, right? Professionalism. Ask your peers. If you're not sure, if you really want to rework all your job descriptions and you've met some directors along the way that you think are sharp and you really think they've got it together, collaborate. Ask them if they're willing to share parts. Maybe not even everything. Just ask them for the roles and responsibilities, or just ask them for maybe their the minimum education requirements for a lead teacher, for an assistant teacher, for a co-teacher. Do you understand the difference between co-teachers, assistant teachers, lead teachers? How does that work with pay scale? So when you're organizing the chaos in your building, you've got the organizational structure, you've got the business structure. So you've got the business structure, that's kind of first. Then you've got the organizational structure inside, which again, as the director, You may or may not have a lot of say in this. This may be done by either the business entity or the organization, but if you're the owner, then you definitely have a role to play in this. If you're not sure that how it's working in your building works well, then sit down. Let's talk about it, right? You can either talk about it with us, pick up the phone, schedule a coaching call. If you want us to come in and consult with you and the owner or some administrative program staff, we can definitely do that. But it is always important for you to make sure that everybody on staff knows what's going on and everybody is clear on who reports to who. It shouldn't be you and that everybody reports to you, right? So if you've got lead teachers, assistant teachers should report to lead teachers. If you've got some other staff, peripheral staff, they don't necessarily all need to report to you. If you've got an assistant director, there's definitely people who can report directly to the assistant director who don't need to report to you. Hopefully this helps. We look forward to talking to you in the next chapter.